so I'm having to monitor and manage my excitement because all three of you said things that are really close to me, either personally or just in my community. So Christopher, I'm gonna start with you because I'm nerding out. I'm a leadership development person and I was geeking out in the back. So I'm gonna start with you, and this is a great question. Possibly most entrepreneurs are often stereotyped as young. How do you inject those in a more mature stage of life with the entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, that is a great question. So first of all, the statistics don't bear that out necessarily. Hopefully you can hear me. My wife thinks I swallowed a microphone when I was born. I feel like I've got two microphones, and none of them are working.
You're going to use this.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. So first of all, people who start businesses are actually a little bit later in their lives for good reason. Typically, you want to come from with a set of experiences before you launch your first venture. So many of the entrepreneurs are actually in their late 20s, early 30s, and later. But I would also say that we're in this amazing place where you can look at this idea of third age. And there's actually a terrific prize called the Purpose Prize, which is given out to people who start social enterprises after the age of 60. One of the amazing things we do have here is we have so many people who are moving to the state because of the quality of life. But if we can create that kind of supportive environment so that they feel like they've got a community and they're able to connect into that community, into those kinds of resources and relationships we're talking about, then I think we can tap into some of that potential because we have this really vibrant third age, right? And maybe somebody who is now entering into my next 50 years of life, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to really take that seriously and make sure that we are leveraging North Carolina's reputation as one of the best places to retire, and maybe a place that not only the best place to retire, but the best place to spend the next third of your life making a difference.
Yeah, thank you. So the conversation, your presentation, and then Sharon, your presentation, I saw some interconnectedness between the economic clusters and the innovation ecosystems. So what advice would you give to someone who really wants to get that going in their community as a way to reinvigorate their area, combining kind of relationships between local businesses, community leaders? What advice would you give to help someone start that work? Where does it actually start?
It starts here. It starts inside. I couldn't agree with you more, Christopher, that it's about your sense of grounding of purpose and your own personal commitment to helping your community to develop in a positive and strong way, not just economically, but in terms of quality of life, in terms of opportunity. I think that would be the number one thing I would say. I tell people that I love growing older. I know that sounds weird, but the joy of growing older is that I have this lifetime to look back on and to have learned from, and to be doing what I'm doing now at this age. I'm much more grounded than I was when I was 29. And I have learned a lot of things that I think allow me to take on a Herculean task with not a sense of fear, but of absolute amazement at the opportunity that lies before us. And so I just underscore it starts here. Secondly, don't quit developing your network. I find a lot of my colleagues, particularly if your center of activity and the place from which you want to develop that network or that cluster or that center of innovation is a rural area, it's very isolating. If you live in a rural community, you know what, guys? There are not 40 of us hanging out at the bar after work because there are not 40 people there. And if there were, and you're a Sharon, they would all go, oh, God, she is so strange. She's trying to change our community. What is this? You just have to get in and begin to develop relationships at a grassroots level. And in a rural community, a smaller community, sometimes that's in a backyard around a fire pit, and there's 6 of you. Sometimes it's breakfast with one. Sometimes it is a phone call with somebody who's very angry at the change you're creating, and you just stop to listen. where a lot of that kind of relationship development in an urban center happens socially. You know, in my parents' era, it would have been around the water cooler. Today, it's at a Starbucks, or it is at somewhere where you connect socially. So the second thing I would tell you is don't lose your connections. I mean, I'm in and out of Charlotte. I'm in and out of Asheville. I'm in and out of Greenville, South Carolina. I'm in and out of Spartanburg. I stay connected in all those places where I've been and the things I've done. People say, why do you drive to Raleigh in a day and come back? That's 8 hours in a car. Because the relationship here matters to us in Mill Spring, North Carolina. So those are the two things I'd say.
I want to take a systemic approach to this as well. I agree everything with what Sharon just said. But I want to provide a quick anecdote to Raleigh, right? We're here. It feels like a very cool, vibrant, dynamic environment. When I first moved back to North Carolina, to Durham 10 years ago, it was a time when Durham was on the move. And there was a great saying, which Durham had stolen the cool from Chapel Hill, the funk from Carborough, and left the boring in Raleigh. And I totally subscribe to that idea. But interestingly enough, there was a group of stakeholders who came together and basically said, we've got to figure out a way that we can make Raleigh cool. We've got to make it an innovative hub. And there was an effort that I was part of and a number of us were part of called Innovate Raleigh to take a very intentional approach around a cross-sector group of stakeholders to put a stake in the ground and say, we want to make this a truly vibrant innovation economy. And it required cross-sector leadership, so it required public and private. It required the entrepreneurial environment. It required grassroots leaders, and that persists to this day, which I think has now put Raleigh on the map. I will say the one thing that is holding this area back in terms of being able to put us truly on the map in terms of our entrepreneurial stats is that we have 2 MSAs. We have Raleigh and Durham, and that kills us on national statistics and data. If you were to look and combine those MSAs, we would be top 5, one of the top 5 entrepreneurial environments in terms of entrepreneurial starts and small business growth right now. And that is the kind of story we need to continue to tell. So it's not only starting with ourselves, but making sure that we've got cross-sector leadership that is able to really rally around a vision for where we want to try to go, a shared set of outcomes to be able to get there, embrace equity and inclusion, and make it happen.
So just for clarification, what is an MSA for those?
Sorry, that's a metropolitan statistical area. So it's what demographers use to basically track population trends. And so they look at it based on an MSA, and having 2 MSAs, we hamper our own numbers from that vantage point.
Yeah, the verdict's still out of whether or not Raleigh's cool.
It is cool. It is cool. I live in Durham. I love Durham, but I'm Bull City with you all the way. But I will say that Raleigh's pretty damn cool.
So Secretary Hall, I'm sure you are anticipating a couple of heavy questions. Maybe not. But I wanted to start, there were several questions around homeless veterans in North Carolina. So could you speak to how many homeless veterans do we have in North Carolina? What are some initiatives that are helping to eliminate that as a reality for our state? So if you could speak to that.
Well, first of all, we have a population in North Carolina that we count once a year, a point-in-time count where we determine who are veterans and who are all the other folks in our homeless population. 2 years ago, we had achieved approximately a 14% reduction in veteran homelessness. Now, I always said we're part of the community, not apart from the community. So when you say a veteran is homeless, if it's a mother or a father who has a child, there are 2 people homeless. Veteran is counted as 1. There are several programs out there. One of the things our department does is work with a lot of organizations who are trying to reduce homelessness. We've had a person in our department who works specifically on what programs and support are available for veterans to fight homelessness, to prevent homelessness. And so veterans are uniquely situated in that manner versus a lot of other homeless persons because they have these benefits. Many times people don't know how to access them or don't even think to inquire about them. So again, each county has a veteran service office that supposedly is available, if people know to use it, to assist veterans in obtaining their benefits and therefore addressing homelessness or drug addiction or even getting their education benefits or whatever disability payments they might be eligible for. So it's really important that we recognize, again, that part of the veteran community that reflects what's happening. We have a higher rate among the veteran community in both suicide and in homelessness. But one of the reasons is the way that veterans think in many instances and are taught to be self-sufficient, to be strong, not to rely on other people instead of having strong collaboration instincts. And so that psychological barrier many times is there that contributes to them not getting help when it's available, and it's all the more tragic when they have benefits that can be channeled to solve those issues.
So in that same kind of pathway of thought or train of thought, could you speak to how communities, so being a part of the community and not apart from the community, I think is a really key point, because I think a lot of folks feel very far removed from the military. If that's not your lifestyle, if you're not around it, it's sort of an afterthought or a secondary thought. So what can communities do to support military families, whether they be active duty, veterans families? Specifically now, there was a question around, and I don't know if you can answer this, but how many Fort Bragg soldiers have been sent to the Middle East in the context of recent events in Iraq? So what can communities do to support those families that are still here, a part of our community?
The first thing, let me address the Fort Bragg question quickly, because I was down there yesterday and met with General Mike Garrett, who's the commander of Army Forces. So all the training for all Army Forces are coordinated by him, and he is one of those many generals we talked about that are at Fort Bragg, Pentagon South as we call it, that dictate and determine what happens with our force. Approximately 3,500 from Fort Bragg deployed the first wave. But for those of you who are familiar with the military, you know that for every soldier or Marine who is deployed, there is a logistics trail or train or a supply train that has to support them. So many more folks will be pushed forward to the Middle East to reinvigorate the supply train to support those operations. And so what you can do, well, first of all, and I guess, you know, we usually think a lot of folks don't know who the military are or whatever. So I'm gonna do a quick survey if I can. Everybody in the room who is a veteran, please raise your hand. Okay, small number. Keep your hand up real quick. Everybody in the room who knows a veteran, raise your hand. Okay, so we know who veterans are. We just don't activate in our minds an appreciation for what they're doing and how we can help. Especially in times of deployment, you have volunteer opportunities. One of the great organizations is the USO, and they help families, and we were down there. We have on the 30th of this month a special family services event we're doing in conjunction with Fort Bragg and their USO to help the families who are left behind, who have challenges of everything from finances to picking up where the second job of the service member may be and how do they maintain that. What about the private company that the other spouse or the left behind spouse has and the additional duties they have as a result? What about the impacts on the family and the type of mentoring or assistance they need? And so those opportunities to volunteer specifically with the USO, which has an office at RDU, where service members transitioning through stop, they have a lounge, they have assistance, travel assistance, et cetera, those are opportunities to volunteer both at RDU and in Fayetteville at their location and in Jacksonville. So if you want to reach out to an organization, the USO will let you plug in immediately when you hear that. But there are also military organizations, and I would encourage all of you in this room who are military to join those auxiliary organizations. The Association for the United States Army, the Marine Corps League, the Air Force Association. We have a Triangle Naval Academy Association, but just many of them who are doing good work and providing that counseling and assistance. So again, as you saw those hands go up, you understand we're part of the community. We're part of the community in this room, and we can reach back, we can reach out, and all of that will help these families. We have young families, and the challenges they face when they have to deploy are just tremendous, whether it's with their education, children worried about whether their parents will return, just many things of that type. So again, I appeal to you to make your presence felt, kind of reach back and remember the experience you had, especially the veterans, and join those organizations that will adopt these families and provide that assistance.
So Sharon, this last question is for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot a bit because I like the question. Would you ever consider running for statewide office?
My husband's answer would be no. But I never say never. I love the state, and that is not on my personal list, but I never say never. We are so fortunate to live in North Carolina, and it has been a great joy to serve it in a lot of capacities. One of the greatest joys of my journey, however, has been to do what I'm doing now at a grassroots level, having had the policy-making experience, having had the corporate experience, to come back to a community that has struggled so economically and be able to really turn the dial of change has really been one of the greatest experiences of my life. Here's what I know, is that the good Lord who created me has prepared me for every step of the journey. So whatever he opens up in the next phase of it, I'll be open.
Thank you.